In general, you'd hope that a manufacturer would make a car as good as it possibly could. Toyota just does the bare minimum with this thing while still charging mega bucks for it.
What if some of the biggest, most iconic SUVs on the road today simply vanished by 2026? Not because of low sales, but because new regulations could make them illegal to build, illegal to sell, and in some states, even illegal to register. Over the next few minutes, you'll see 7 popular SUVs that are heading straight toward bans, shutdowns, and forced retirement. And the real reasons behind those decisions might surprise you. Number 7. Dodge Durango Hellcat. The Durango Hellcat has always been a wild card, an SUV that shouldn't exist, yet stubbornly does. A 3-row family hauler powered by a supercharged 6.2-liter V8 pushing well over 700 horsepower was always going to attract government attention. But now, with multiple federal and state-level regulations tightening at the same time, the Hellcat is directly in the crosshairs. And in 2026, it may no longer be legal to produce, sell, or, in some states, even newly register. The core issue is emissions. The Hellcat engine is one of the last surviving high-output supercharged V8s still used in a mass-produced SUV. While Dodge has already ended production once due to emissions restrictions, they revived it temporarily by using remaining engine allocations. That loophole is closing fast. The 2026 EPA standards specifically target high-displacement performance engines with extremely low fuel economy. The Hellcat sits at the absolute bottom of that list. Even the standard Durango V8 barely passes. The Hellcat doesn't stand a chance. But emissions aren't the only problem. Several states are preparing performance tier restrictions, laws that allow banning the registration of vehicles that exceed certain noise, output, or fuel consumption thresholds. California, Washington, New York, and Massachusetts continue to strengthen these rules, and the Hellcat's supercharged roar, low MPG, and extremely high emissions output make it a textbook target. There are early proposals that would block new registrations starting in 2026, even if the SUV was built legally before then. Weight limits are also becoming a major factor. Cities like New York and Washington, D.C. are pushing to penalize or ban certain heavy, high-powered SUVs due to pedestrian safety concerns. The Durango Hellcat, with its high-speed capability and curb weight, checks all the boxes for what policymakers want removed from urban roads. Then there's the insurance issue. Multiple major insurance companies have already raised premiums on Hellcat-powered vehicles due to extreme accident rates, theft rates, and repair costs. This creates a secondary form of soft ban. The vehicle becomes so expensive to insure that it effectively pushes buyers away. When new 2026 insurance regulations link premiums to emissions and crash severity, the Hellcat becomes an even bigger financial liability. Finally, Stellantis is shifting its entire lineup away from Hemi V8s and into Turbo 6 and electric platforms. The company has already confirmed no more gas Hellcats after the current run ends. By 2026, the Durango will move to a new platform designed around electrification, leaving no room for a supercharged V8. Put all these pressures together: emissions rules, state registration bans, weight restrictions, insurance penalties, and Stellantis' own strategy. And the conclusion is unavoidable. The Durango Hellcat is not just at risk. It is almost guaranteed to disappear. For many owners, 2025 is likely the final year to buy, register, or even legally drive one without facing major hurdles. Number 6. Toyota Land Cruiser 70 Series. The Toyota Land Cruiser 70 Series is a legend, an unstoppable, old-school, heavy-duty machine built for mines, deserts, farms, and the most extreme terrain on Earth. But in the United States, its cult popularity has been driven almost entirely by imports through loopholes, specialty dealers, and individual importers. And that is exactly why the 70 Series is at serious risk of being effectively banned in 2026. Not because Toyota wants it gone, but because U.S. regulators are preparing to close every remaining window that allows it to enter the country. The Land Cruiser 70 has been produced for decades with only minor updates. That's its charm, but also its biggest problem. Its design predates modern crash safety regulations, rollover standards, airbag requirements, and emissions systems. Under today's laws, Toyota cannot legally sell a new 70 Series in the U.S. in mass production. The only reason these SUVs appear on American roads is because importers use 3 methods. 1. The 25-year rule, allowing vehicles older than 25 years. 2. Commercial use exemptions. 3. Reconditioned overseas units, marketed as older vehicles. And it's the third category that has the government's attention. Over the past few years, U.S. agencies found that some importers were bringing in new old stock Land Cruiser 70s, units manufactured recently but modified to appear older than 25 years. This allowed them to bypass crash tests, emissions certifications, and safety inspections. In 2026, the Department of Transportation and NHTSA are introducing rule revisions that will eliminate this loophole entirely if a vehicle's actual manufacturing date cannot be verified as older than 25 years. Even if the importer claims it is restored, the vehicle will be banned from entry. More importantly, new digital tracking and VIN verification protocols are coming online in 2026. These systems cross-check engine numbers, frame numbers, production batches, and shipping logs directly with overseas manufacturers to ensure authenticity. Toyota's international plants already comply with these data-sharing requirements, which means any suspicious, made-to-look-old 70 Series will be flagged instantly. Importers will no longer be able to claim this is a 1998 unit when the parts and production trace back to 2022. Then there's the emissions issue. Several states, including California, Colorado, and Washington, are planning to expand their off-road vehicle emissions rules. These laws could block registration of non-compliant diesel vehicles, even if they were imported under the 25-year rule. A 70 Series with its original engine is extremely unlikely to meet 2026 state-level standards, and retrofitting it with modern emissions gear is nearly impossible without altering the vehicle's historic classification. On top of that, safety compliance crackdowns are intensifying. Some versions of the 70 Series lack side impact protection, modern airbag systems, or reinforced crumple zones. Under the updated 2026 guidelines, even low-volume and farm use exemptions may no longer qualify unless the vehicle meets certain minimum standards. The 70 Series simply cannot meet them without major redesign, which Toyota is not going to do for the U.S. market. There's also the insurance angle. Specialty insurance companies are raising concerns over frame design, rollover history, and lack of modern safety systems. With new 2026 underwriting rules, vehicles classified as high-risk vintage off-roaders could face dramatically higher premiums or lose eligibility for certain policies. Without insurance, registration becomes impossible, another form of soft ban. So what does this mean for enthusiasts? If the 70 series is currently registered and legally imported, you can keep it. But finding a new one, importing, registering, insuring, or even titling it after 2026 will become extremely difficult. Not because Toyota is ending production, but because regulators are shutting down every pathway that allows old-school commercial trucks into the U.S. without meeting modern safety and emission standards. In short, the Land Cruiser 70 isn't being banned by Toyota. It's being banned by paperwork, compliance, and regulation. And once those 2026 rules take full effect, this legendary SUV may vanish from future U.S. imports entirely. Number 5. Mercedes-Benz G-Class. Few SUVs carry the myth, status, and aura of the Mercedes-Benz G-Class. It's a hand-built icon with military DNA, a squared-off design that hasn't changed much since the 1970s, and a reputation for being one of the toughest and most luxurious vehicles ever made. But for all its heritage, the current G-Class has one major problem. It is one of the least compatible SUVs with the environmental, safety, and fuel economy rules coming into effect in 2026. And that puts it on a direct path toward restrictions, penalties, and potential bans across several states. The biggest threat comes from emissions and fuel economy regulations. The G-Class, especially the G550 and the AMG G63, uses large, high-output V8 engines that fail to meet the strict 2026 standards without massive redesigns. In fact, Mercedes has already announced that future G-Class development is shifting toward electrification, with a fully electric EQG model expected to replace or overshadow the gas versions. The company knows what's coming. The gas-powered G-Wagon cannot meet the updated fuel efficiency and greenhouse gas limits, making it nearly impossible to sell in its current form. But state-level actions are moving even faster. California, New York, Oregon, Washington, Massachusetts, and several others are rolling out phased bans on high-emission luxury vehicles. These rules don't just target total emissions, they also restrict registration of vehicles with poor fuel economy, high curb weights, and aggressive pedestrian impact profiles. The G-Class, which weighs well over 5,800 pounds and scores poorly in several front-impact pedestrian tests, is exactly the kind of vehicle these laws are written to eliminate from new registrations by 2026. Next comes urban restrictions. Some major cities, Chicago, New York, Washington, D.C., and Los Angeles, are considering congestion zone bans or heavy vehicle surcharges for large SUVs due to rising accident severity. Data shows that tall, heavy vehicles like the G-Class pose increased risk in low-speed collisions, especially involving pedestrians. With growing political pressure, these local bans could begin affecting which vehicles can enter city centers without paying massive fees or being restricted entirely. The G-Class, with its height, weight, and narrow impact zones, will be one of the first to feel those restrictions. Then there's the insurance problem, which many owners are already dealing with. Insurance companies are raising premiums dramatically for the G-Class after years of increased claim costs. Repair bills are extremely high. Part prices are among the most expensive in the SUV category, and the G-Wagon is one of the most stolen luxury vehicles in the U.S. New 2026 insurance risk guidelines will further penalize vehicles with high repair costs high theft rates, and poor crash compatibility scores. That combination makes the gas-powered G-Wagon a primary target for insurance surcharges, exclusions, or outright denial in certain states. Another issue is weight and battery-related policy changes. The G-Class is so heavy that new rules could push it into the heavy vehicle category, triggering additional state-level taxes. States like Colorado and New Jersey are already preparing additional fees for oversized gas SUVs due to infrastructure damage concerns. Something electric and hybrid replacements won't face vehicles above certain thresholds may eventually require special registration or added road use taxes. Mercedes sees this coming. That's why it has accelerated the timeline for the electric EQG and has quietly slowed development on new gas variants. 2025 is expected to be the final strong year for the G550 and AMG G63 before regulatory pressure begins forcing retreat. Some states may still allow sales, but many will tack on costly environmental fees or registration constraints that make owning a gas G-Wagon financially painful. All signs point in one direction. While the G-Class name will live on, the gas-powered versions, the ones people know and love, are the ones facing the unofficial ban. Not through a single federal law, but through a combination of emissions restrictions, fuel economy penalties, urban access bans, insurance pressures, and corporate strategy shifts that make the tradition of a V8 G-Wagon nearly impossible to maintain beyond 2026. The G-Wagon isn't going away entirely, but the gas-powered G-Wagon is living on borrowed time. Number 4. Jeep Cherokee. The Jeep Cherokee once defined an entire segment of American SUVs, compact yet rugged, comfortable yet capable. But today, it stands at the center of a storm involving safety regulations, platform shutdowns, factory closures, and a complete collapse in sales. Unlike performance SUVs or luxury gas guzzlers, the Cherokee isn't facing a ban because it's too powerful or too dirty. It's facing one because the SUV simply cannot meet the new 2026 safety and crash standards, and the platform it sits on is being eliminated entirely. The biggest blow came when Stellantis shut down the Belvidere assembly plant, where the Cherokee was built. Official statements said the model was under review, but insiders confirmed what many suspected. The Cherokee's aging platform was no longer compatible with future safety requirements. The 2026 frontal impact and side impact regulations demand stronger structures, more advanced crumple zone engineering, and updated chassis reinforcement. The Cherokee's platform predates those requirements and would cost too much to re-engineer. This is important because when a platform is discontinued, the model itself can no longer be built, certified, or legally produced for sale. Even if Jeep wanted to keep the Cherokee alive, the old frame, crash structure, and underpinnings cannot pass the next round of U.S. crash testing rules. Older models already struggle with marginal safety ratings, and the 2026 criteria are significantly tougher. In simple terms, if a vehicle cannot meet the minimum crash standard, it cannot be sold or registered as a new vehicle. But the problems don't end there. Emissions pressure is hitting mid-size and compact SUVs particularly hard. The Cherokee's engines, especially its older 2.4-liter and 3.2-liter V6, have poor fuel economy relative to modern standards, with corporate average fuel economy, CAFE, requirements tightening again in 2026. Stellantis cannot afford to keep a low-efficiency SUV dragging down its fleet numbers. Automakers face massive fines if their overall fuel economy doesn't hit federal targets. And keeping the Cherokee alive would push those penalties even higher. There's also the matter of sales collapse. In recent years, sales have fallen by more than 70%. Regulators often focus first on models with low volume because they are easier to eliminate quietly. When a factory closes, when sales dry up, and when a platform reaches the end of its certification life, regulators have no incentive to grant extensions, exceptions, or special allowances. The Cherokee is caught in that exact situation. Safety advocates have also put pressure on mid-size SUVs with outdated structures. Rear seat safety tests revealed weaknesses in older Cherokee models, and new rules require improved passenger compartment integrity and airbag coverage. Retrofitting these features is difficult and expensive, especially on an SUV that Jeep already decided not to update. A potential ban also comes from registration complications. Some states may place restrictions on new registrations of vehicles that fail to meet updated emissions or safety standards. Once a model is officially discontinued and aging inventory sells out, it becomes harder for dealerships to certify remaining units for sale. In extreme cases, leftover unsold Cherokees after 2025 might not meet 2026 compliance deadlines, meaning dealers cannot legally register or transfer them as new vehicles. Insurance companies aren't helping either. Older structure crossovers tend to fare worse in real-world accidents. Insurers already add risk premiums to vehicles with weaker crash test performance, and as new 2026 rules roll out, premiums for pre-update models may increase. High insurance rates create yet another form of soft ban, making the Cherokee less and less viable for mainstream buyers. Jeep is shifting resources toward electrified platforms and new generation models like the Wagoneer S and Recon, vehicles designed specifically to pass future regulations. The Cherokee does not fit into Stellantis's 2026 planning at all. Between factory closures, regulatory deadlines, emissions penalties, safety test failures, and shrinking sales, the Cherokee has nowhere left to go. The end result is unavoidable. The Cherokee won't be returning in its old form. And by 2026, the rules themselves will make it impossible to sell, certify, or legally launch the previous generation Cherokee ever again. Number 3. Chevy Tahoe and Suburban. The Chevy Tahoe and Suburban are two of the most recognizable full-size SUVs in American history. They're staples of police fleets, family road trips, towing duty, and long-distance travel. But their size, weight, and gas-powered V8 engines have placed them directly in the middle of a growing regulatory battle, one that could lead to heavy penalties, regional bans, and serious ownership challenges beginning in 2026. These won't disappear overnight, but new rules are coming that will make owning or buying one far more difficult than most drivers expect. The first major issue is weight class regulation. Both the Tahoe and Suburban have steadily increased in size and mass over the generations today. A Suburban can easily exceed 6,000 pounds, and certain trims push close to 6,300 plus. The Tahoe isn't far behind. New 2026 safety and pedestrian impact rules are focusing specifically on oversized SUVs due to rising fatality rates in multi-vehicle and pedestrian collisions. These rules are being designed so that vehicles above certain weight and height thresholds face new taxes. restricted access to certain city zones, or, in some jurisdictions, complete bans from entering specified urban areas during peak hours. Cities like New York, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., and Chicago are already proposing heavy vehicle penalties. The Tahoe and Suburban fall squarely into the category of vehicles lawmakers want to target because of their large front surface area, elevated hoods, and extended braking distances. While these may remain legal to own, they may be blocked from city centers or subjected to heavy congestion fees by 2026. Then there's fuel economy and emissions pressure. The 2026 EPA and CAFE requirements are among the strictest ever implemented, and large V8 SUVs perform poorly. Under these rules, GM's 5.3-liter and 6.2-liter engines have been massively outpaced by new hybrid and turbocharged competitors. The Tahoe struggles with real-world MPG, and the Suburban, being heavier, does even worse. If GM keeps producing these engines without major electrification support, the company faces enormous fines. That is why GM has already hinted at major powertrain changes, including hybridizing the full-size SUV lineup or phasing out certain V8s altogether. Some states are taking this further. California, Maryland, New York, and Oregon are developing regulations that restrict registration of high-emission, low-MPG vehicles after certain years. While these won't ban existing Tahoes and Suburbans from the road, they may block new registrations or transfer of ownership filings for certain trims that fail to meet the updated standards. If a vehicle cannot be registered, dealers cannot legally sell it. That is how a regional ban gets created without needing a federal law. Another issue is crash compatibility requirements. Large SUVs like the Suburban often overwhelm smaller vehicles in collisions. New 2026 test requirements evaluate how well a vehicle protects not only its own occupants, but others on the road. Vehicles with high stiffness and tall profiles, like the Tahoe and Suburban, tend to perform poorly in opposing vehicle safety calculations. This could force GM to redesign the structural geometry or retire certain configurations that fail to meet those scores. Insurance companies are also starting to push back. Full-size SUVs have some of the highest claim costs in the industry due to heavy structural components, expensive body panels, LED and camera-equipped bumpers, large engines that cost more to repair. Under new 2026 insurance risk models, premiums for oversized SUVs will likely rise even higher, especially in states implementing accident density surcharges. This adds another layer of financial burden on future owners, creating a soft ban driven not by government, but by economics. Public infrastructure concerns are also mounting. Several states have reported accelerated road wear caused by large gas SUVs and pickup trucks. New policy proposals include higher registration fees for vehicles exceeding certain weight thresholds. If passed, Tahoe and Suburban owners could face significantly higher annual costs as early as 2026. GM sees the writing on the wall. That's why the company is aggressively moving toward electrification across its SUV and truck lineup. But until fully electric versions with acceptable range and towing capability are ready, the gas-powered Tahoe and Suburban remain regulatory targets. Costs as early as 2026. GM sees the writing on the wall. That's why the company is aggressively moving toward electrification across its SUV and truck lineup. But until fully electric versions with acceptable range and towing capability are ready, the gas-powered Tahoe and Suburban remain regulatory targets. The bottom line, these SUVs may not be banned nationwide, but a patchwork of regional restrictions, insurance penalties, weight-based taxes, emissions compliance deadlines, and crash compatibility rules could make owning or buying one in 2026 far more complicated. For many areas, the gas Tahoe and Suburban won't be completely illegal. They'll just be too expensive or too restricted to make sense. And that is how a ban begins. Number 2. Nissan Armada. The Nissan Armada is one of the last old-school, V8-powered, body-on-frame SUVs still on the market. It's big, heavy, thirsty, and built on a platform that dates back many years. With only minor updates over time, that formula used to be acceptable. But now, with 2026 emissions rules, fuel economy mandates, and new safety regulations hitting all at once, the Armada finds itself in one of the most vulnerable positions of any mainstream SUV, and the signs of a phase-out or a functional ban are already here. The biggest issue is emissions compliance. The Armada's 5.6-liter V8 is simply not designed for the ultra-strict greenhouse gas limits that take effect in 2026. Automakers are required to drastically reduce overall fleet emissions, and the Armada is one of the worst-performing vehicles in its class when it comes to miles per gallon. Nissan would face massive penalties for keeping it in production without an updated engine. And developing an all-new V8 or hybrid powertrain just for the Armada isn't financially viable at current sales volume. That leads directly to the next point. Sales have collapsed. In recent years, Armada sales dropped sharply as buyers moved toward more efficient, more modern alternatives. Regulators tend to focus hardest on low-volume models that don't justify a redesign. When a vehicle sells in small numbers, the manufacturer is less likely to invest in new crash structures, updated electronics, or redesigned emissions systems. This makes the Armada one of the easiest SUVs for regulators to push off the market when new standards arrive. And that's exactly what multiple states are preparing to do. Several upcoming 2026 emissions laws, particularly in California, Washington, Oregon, New York, and Colorado, take aim at older, non-electrified V8 platforms. These rules can restrict registration of new high-emission vehicles or block them from being sold at dealerships. Even if the Armada remains legal at the federal level, state-level registration bans will make it impossible to buy new units in certain regions. These restrictions won't affect existing owners, but they will crush future sales. There's also the issue of fleet average fuel economy, which automakers must meet across all vehicles sold. Large, outdated SUVs like the Armada drag down the entire company's average every unit sold, makes it harder for Nissan to comply with federal requirements. For this reason, the Armada has already moved to the back of Nissan's product priority list. Internally, the company is focused on electrification, new hybrids, and turbocharged replacements, not on retrofitting an aging V8 SUV that regulators are targeting anyway. Safety compliance is another pressure point. The Armada's platform wasn't engineered for the 2026 crash standards that require stronger side impact protection, updated airbag systems, and improved crumple zone behavior. While the SUV is safe, the new rules raise the bar significantly. The current structure would require expensive re-engineering to pass tests. With sales declining and emissions rules tightening, Nissan has no reason to pour millions into a vehicle that is already slated for replacement. Speaking of replacement, Nissan has openly hinted at a next-generation full-size SUV, one that will be hybrid or fully electric. This successor is expected to arrive around 2026, and history shows that when a company prepares a major electrified replacement, the outgoing gas version often fades out months before regulatory deadlines. The Armada is likely to follow that script exactly. Insurance pressures add yet another layer. The Armada's repair costs are high, parts are expensive, and its size increases crash severity scores. Under new 2026 insurance models that penalize vehicles with poor fuel economy and high collision risk, the Armada could see sharply rising premiums. This creates a form of soft ban, making the SUV financially impractical even if technically legal. Then there's the environmental zoning issue. Some cities are working on low-emission zones that restrict or surcharge large gas SUVs. The Armada, with its curb weight, height, and V8 power, would be an obvious target. Owners in certain metro areas may find themselves paying hefty access fees by 2026, especially during peak traffic hours. Put all of these factors together: emissions rules, declining sales, crash regulations, insurer penalties, state registration bans, and Nissan's own shift to electrification. And the future becomes very clear. By 2026, the current generation Armada will not only be gone from production, it may be impossible to buy or register as a new vehicle in many parts of the country. That's not an official ban, but it works exactly like one. Number 1. Ford Expedition. The Ford Expedition has long been considered one of the most capable full-size SUVs in America. A powerful family hauler, a towing champion, and a go-anywhere machine built for space and strength. But those very strengths have now pushed it into the center of a regulatory storm. Among all the big SUVs at risk in 2026, the Expedition faces the most pressure from emissions laws, weight class restrictions, pedestrian safety regulations, and new federal crash compatibility standards. Together, these forces put the Expedition at the highest risk of being functionally banned in multiple regions across the U.S. The biggest threat comes from weight-based regulation, which expands dramatically in 2026. The Expedition can weigh well over 6,000 pounds, and the max version pushes close to 6,500. Under new government guidelines, vehicles crossing certain thresholds may be categorized as heavy passenger vehicles, triggering additional compliance requirements, higher crash compatibility scores, and in some states, special registration rules. Vehicles with tall hoods, high front profiles, and long braking distances, including the Expedition, are being closely scrutinized due to rising pedestrian fatality statistics. Several states and major U.S. cities are considering access restrictions for vehicles exceeding certain mass limits. New York, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Chicago, and Seattle have already floated congestion zone policies, environmental impact fees, or partial entry bans for oversized gas SUVs. These rules are designed specifically for vehicles like the Expedition, large, tall, and fuel-intensive. The max version is especially vulnerable because of its size and weight. If these policies take effect in 2026, Expeditions may be permitted only outside city centers or require costly daily fees to enter. The next major pressure point is emissions and fuel economy compliance. The Expedition's twin-turbo EcoBoost V6 is powerful and capable, but when installed in a 3-ton SUV, even modern engines struggle to meet EPA greenhouse gas targets, Ford's entire full-size SUV lineup adds substantial drag on the company's corporate average fuel economy CAFE numbers. And the 2026 standards are the toughest, yet keeping a large, high-drag SUV in production without hybridization or electrification could cost Ford tens of millions in fines. This is why Ford has already announced aggressive electrification plans for future SUVs and trucks. Internal reports suggest that a fully electric Expedition, or at least a heavy hybrid, will replace the current model around 2026 to 2027. When a manufacturer prepares a major electrified successor, they usually begin winding down production of the non-compliant version before regulations tighten. This is precisely what happened to several large sedans, V8 SUVs, and truck variants over the past decade, and the Expedition is next in line. Safety regulations are another major concern. New 2026 crash compatibility rules evaluate how large SUVs affect other vehicles in collisions. Tall, stiff, heavy SUVs like the Expedition often transfer disproportionately high force into smaller cars during a crash. Vehicles that perform poorly in these opposing vehicle safety evaluations may require structural redesigns. The Expedition's current platform, based heavily on the F-150 truck, was never engineered for the revised 2026 standards. Updating it would require expensive platform modifications, which Ford has little incentive to perform while transitioning toward electric versions. There is also growing scrutiny over front-end pedestrian safety in massive SUVs. The Expedition's tall hood and high bumper line place pedestrians at greater risk in front impact scenarios. Several states have proposed rules to address this by enforcing new hood height, crumple zone, and bumper design limits beginning in 2026. Unless Ford redesigns the Expedition's front profile, some trims may fail to qualify for certification under these new requirements. Insurance is becoming another form of soft regulation. The Expedition has high repair costs due to its size, aluminum body panels, and technology-laden bumpers. New 2026 insurance risk models will penalize vehicles with high accident severity, large dimensions, and expensive structural parts. Premiums could increase substantially in states that already heavily tax large vehicles. Environmental policy adds a final layer of pressure. Several states are targeting heavy gas SUVs for road use surcharges beginning in 2026 because of their impact on infrastructure. Some proposals include annual fees for vehicles beyond certain curb weight limits. The Expedition, especially max variants, easily crosses these limits. All these regulations intersect at the same moment. Weight restrictions, fuel economy mandates, crash compatibility rules, pedestrian safety standards, insurance-based penalties, city access restrictions, electrification transitions. For the Expedition, 2026 is the breaking point. While an outright national ban is unlikely, a functional ban, created through registration limits, cost penalties, safety compliance issues, and corporate phase-outs, will make the gas Expedition extremely difficult to buy, certify, or afford. In many parts of the country, Ford's upcoming electrified replacement will survive. But the gas-powered Expedition you know today, its road is rapidly coming to an end. The SUVs on this list aren't disappearing because people stopped loving them. They're disappearing because 2026 brings the biggest regulatory shift the auto industry has seen in decades. Emissions rules, safety standards, insurance penalties, weight restrictions, and city access bans are all converging at the same moment. And the SUVs built on old platforms simply can't keep up. Whether you own one, want one, or are just curious about the future of big SUVs, one thing is clear. The way we buy, register, and drive these vehicles is about to change dramatically. If you want a deep dive into which SUVs will survive the new rules and which electric replacements are worth watching, make sure to check out our upcoming videos. The next few years are going to reshape the roads more than any time in recent memory. Stay informed, stay prepared, and stay ahead of the changes coming fast.